Great. Jack, do you want to kick us off?
Yeah, see some familiar names in the list. Welcome, everybody, and thank you for joining our pilot webinar and what we hope to be several more coming up from Speakeasy. Today, we're going to be talking about some of our best practices around e-commerce and marketing. Kind of go over the basics of what's needed for a successful marketing campaign and a successful e-commerce store. So I'll be touching on several different points in that subject matter, and then we will hand it off to our wonderful director of marketing, Kim. Also want to introduce my other panelists, Alexandra, who many of you probably already know, our VP of Partnerships. And then Elizabeth Sanders is also on. She is a PSM just like myself. Both of us have pretty extensive e-commerce experience prior to Speakeasy. So, any questions that come up either during this presentation or after, feel free to reach out. We do have a Q&A open, so feel free to drop your questions in there and we'll get to as many as we can. All right, let's do it. So again, this webinar is about e-commerce best practices, and we're going to cover several different topics, from creating an effective e-commerce strategy, and a lot of this will have to do with conversion rate optimization and actually how you set up your customer journey, building awareness and what it takes to get traffic to your store, what to do with customer data such as emails, and how to utilize those and turn those into conversions. Other ways to capture data on social platforms and how to use that, and then retargeting and paid campaigns. So first and foremost, when it comes to a successful e-commerce strategy, you want your e-com store to be streamlined and as easy to use as possible for your customers. So we talk a lot about conversion rate optimization and what that means. And for me, what it's always boiled down to is making that customer journey as easy as possible, putting as few clicks between the customer and the checkout. And really, it's about having your main site, because I know a lot of our clients have a main website, and then we build a subdomain to point to. So it's about having easy access to that subdomain where they can shop. So we always suggest having a big buy now button in the main navigation. We really like it to stand out. In my previous life in agency, the buy now button would almost be highlighted above anything else on a main web page. And then also a very successful strategy we've seen, which is sort of kind of a basic best practices for brands that have individual product pages on their main sites. So for example, if you have a spirit section and it highlights each of your different spirits, it's best to actually have a buy now button below those sections as well, because as customers read about your product and they become interested in it, that you can take them directly to the PDP for that product in order to get them through the funnel faster and get them converting. Now, it takes a lot of content when it comes to an e-commerce strategy. Content is king. So one thing that brands should be investing in from the beginning is just high quality product images, but not only product images, because anybody can get a render or a PNG of the bottle, but we find that having lifestyle images really helps with captivating audiences, because a product shot can tell you what the product is, but the lifestyle images really drill down into why the customer wants that. It shows them how that product fits into their life, fits into their lifestyle, and sort of scratches that itch of what they want out of the product. Also, it's best to have as much information as possible to help customers, to drive the decision making for customers on those PDPs. We have lots of successful clients that have extensive product descriptions. If they have a very special product that comes from a family farm, they outline that. They tell the brand story, or they tell the product story through those PDPs. But also they can add other types of value on the e-commerce store, such as recipe cards. It's a great example because there's a lot of tequilas out there. But if you can provide a specific recipe, so something with your twist, to give the customer more of an idea of how this fits into their life, then that just drives that decision making, and it just helps them make those decisions to buy your product over maybe something they see on the shelf down the street. And then there's plenty of other ways to sort of show and prove, if you will, on the e-commerce stores. Reviews are huge. Obviously, seeing that social proof through reviews and having customers leave those reviews just shows, again, it's all about social proof. And obviously, there are trolls everywhere, so it's really easy to actually sort and edit those, not edit the reviews themselves, but sort of pick and choose which are approved, so that you can sort of control the messaging around that. And then bundles are huge. If you've onboarded with me or most of my team, this has probably been brought up in our kickoff call, if not throughout the conversation. Being able to, if you've got multiple products and being able to bundle those together, that can really help drive AOV, which we'll talk about AOV a little bit later. But just having assets that visually represent those bundles. If you've got multiple different spirits in your catalog, and you want to create, say, a bar starter kit where you get a gin, a whiskey, and a vodka, where it's just everything you need to get started, then that is a great way to sort of incentivize customers to buy more. Next slide, please. So a lot of the brands that come to Speakeasy, they're very new, and they are trying to break into the market, and that's all about captivating or grabbing audiences and getting them through your funnel, and finding those audiences can be difficult, but there are lots of ways to find the right customer for your brand. Social media is huge. Everybody, that I don't need to tell anybody on this call that, but it's a huge tool. And so if you leveraging your current audience is very important. And what you can do with that is target your current audience who have already sort of bought into your brand, but also use those to push out promotions, to sort of get the early adopter deals out there. And those people are more likely to leave those positive reviews if they've been waiting to try your product, if they're committed to what your brand represents. And it's also an opportunity to put those calls to action. I don't know how that is plural, but the CTAs on the social media posts to get them to your actual store. Organic content is great, but without a CTA, all you're doing is entertaining. Influencers and partnerships are huge in all e-commerce space, but especially with alcohol. We've all seen the explosion in celebrity brands in recent years, but it doesn't have to be a celebrity. It doesn't have to be tequila sold by the Breaking Bad crew. Just a partner that reflects your brand, that your audience really meshes with, can really be a valuable asset to your campaigns. So somebody that has a large reach and can deliver your messaging can be a huge tool when it comes to driving traffic to your social pages, but also ultimately to your store. And there's a number of different ways we can utilize them. So the easiest way would be just by giving them a unique promo code. We have a lot of brands that will have influencers that will be getting the word out about their product. I've got one brand that has I've lost count about how many influencers they have. There's DJs, there's entertainers there, and they all have a special code that gets a certain dollar amount off. And we see a lot of people using those codes just because they are committed to that particular influencer and sort of the lifestyle that they represent. And so it's easy to track how many uses of those codes and whatever sort of kickbacks or incentives that those influencers get. Can be decided by the brand and whatever relationship there. But also just collaborating as well. With if there is somebody outside of the alcohol space, but maybe they have merchandise or artwork that can be partnered with the alcohol, that is just another incentive for getting to audiences that might not naturally land on your content, but that cross-pollination effect is really powerful. And then of course there's just everyday promos. We've all gone to our favorite online retailer, whether it's Lucky or Old Navy, and as soon as they have your email, you are on a drip. And so those I don't think I've bought anything in the last 4 years without at least a 10% discount code off, because customers expect that almost these days. So signing up for those emails, getting that 10% off, running holiday promotions, is a great way to get people's feet in the door. Especially in recent years, we've seen a real big uptick in gift purchasing. So keep that in mind when developing your campaigns and figuring out who you want to target and why. If it's for Father's Day, if it's for the 4th of July, tailor your messaging and your discounts around that. And also, golden rule is start that messaging early and often. Next slide. Thank you. Emails. Email is a huge tool in e-commerce. It's pretty much, for me, number 2 to the beast that is Facebook and Instagram. But for me, no real marketing campaign is complete without an email campaign. So collecting email addresses is pretty much a must, whether it be on both. I would suggest doing it on both the main site and the shop. Sometimes it does take incentives, like I mentioned, the 10% off. But also it just gives you an opportunity to keep in constant contact with your audiences and your customers as well, by keeping them in the loop of new sales, new products, and just offering all of the incentives that you can throw at them to get them back either in the store for the first time or back in your store, so that you can increase the lifetime value of those customers. Most of this can be automated through either we use MailChimp or Klaviyo and with our stores. And a lot of these campaigns, once you do the front end work, a lot of it can be automated and sort of like set and forget, where you can come back monthly, check your metrics, see what campaigns are winning, what you might dial back and focus on something else. So always be collecting email addresses, because not only can you reach out to those customers directly through your email campaigns, but those emails also give you an opportunity to create lookalike audiences on other platforms that can be invaluable to making your marketing dollars much more efficient and go further. And then, of course, it doesn't always have to be a hard sell. Email campaigns can really just be about brand messaging and sort of indoctrinating your audiences into what your brand means, and just really solidifying that top of mind, the top of your brand being top of mind. So next. All right. So when it comes to social media, another thing that is absolutely necessary, and of course most of you probably already have a social media when it comes to organic posting and reaching your audiences that way. But really diving deep and making sure that you have the right integrations into your store is just as important. Another, again, if you've worked with me, I pretty much require you to set up a Google Analytics and a Facebook pixel, as well as those email platforms. And even if you don't plan on running a paid strategy right away, we have a lot of clients that want to start selling first so that they can sort of build up a purse for their social media campaigns. And that's great. That's whatever works for you. But in the meantime, while you are pushing your initial sales out, having your Facebook pixel plugged into your store and having Google Analytics set up is basically going to be passively collecting data so that when you are ready, that data is there for you to use. It'll help your targeting, and it'll, again, make your marketing dollars much, much more efficient on the platform. So, and then again, you want to be able to set goals for yourself. What do you want your click-through rates to look like? What does a good conversion rate look like for you, a particular campaign? So all campaigns are different. Is a prospecting campaign, which would be targeting cold traffic, you might accept a lower conversion rate, or you might be just looking for high click-through rates so you get more people on your page and you know that they might be shopping around. But the goal of that campaign may be to collect emails instead of collecting conversions and actual sales at that point. A warmer campaign, a warmer audience campaign, you may not be satisfied with a 3-4% conversion rate. And that's really, you want to be able to set those goals at the beginning of the campaign of like what those key metrics are and what success looks like, especially when you're spending your hard-earned money on acquiring new customers. And then testing is also huge. There have been times where I've had previous clients, not in this space, but where they just want to throw one message out there, one image asset. They think, oh, we've got this golden idea, this picture and this quote, it'll sell everything for us. And they come to find out that they've sunk a lot of money into sort of put their eggs in one basket. If you're launching a new campaign, testing is key. Trying different audiences and trying different assets is very key. And like I said, content is huge. So you want to be able to have a large cache of images and assets for these campaigns before starting them so that you can continuously rotate them in, test new audiences with different assets, and collect that data. And what we like to say in the industry is trim the fat. So, if anybody's a barbecuer out there, you start with a big brisket and you trim all the fat before you get it on the grill. And you get the best piece of meat out of that. And so it's probably a weird analogy, but I'm a barbecue guy. So so it's really about throwing everything kind of at the wall, and then you trim the fat as you see what is sticking, and you can turn everything off and focus on what you now know is working. So we used to call that buying data. We would do very broad campaigns to begin with, all geos, all age groups that are legal, and all interest targeting. And you would be surprised at some of the nuggets of data that you get out of some of these broad campaigns. You might not expect that there is a huge market in Kentucky for mezcal, but there might be. So never make too many assumptions when starting your campaigns, because again, you may be surprised by the data. All right. And then this is a little bit more about once you sort of have a campaign going, retargeting is huge. You want to continuously, you want to keep touching on these audiences and keeping top of mind. And you can utilize your current visitors, as I mentioned before, create lookalike audiences, which basically what you do is you take an email list or a customer list that Facebook, for example, has provided to you, and you plug it in, and the algorithm will spit out an audience that pretty much resembles all of those people that have already converted. And so they're very likely to convert with lower effort than, say, a cold campaign. And then all of this data that you get, and sort of that I touched on the last slide, can help you kind of funnel your campaigns towards what's working. So geo-targeting, again, if you see that particular states are working better for you, then turn off the states that aren't working and focus on where your highest conversion rates are. And then back to testing. This can be, and I've experienced this in all of my time in e-com, the first few months of testing can be rough. And by rough, I mean, I've had a lot of clients in the past where you turn on a campaign and they expect a 2, 3, 4 return on ad spend right away when they haven't tested anything. And so what those first, I usually say 3 months is all about, is really about buying data. And what that means is you're doing those broad campaigns, you're seeing where you're getting the most click-through rates, where you're getting the most conversions. And you can make assumptions based on these data points. And so where, you may spend a good chunk of your budget in those first 3 months, and maybe you're seeing only a few conversions trickle in, but that money that you've spent on gaining that data that will make your campaigns much more efficient in the future is invaluable. So it's sort of like investing in the market right before a consolidation and thinking, oh, well, do I need to sell? Did I make a mistake? When it's about to take off. So it's really about patience, diligence, and really reading your data and utilizing it as best as you can. All right. So that is my spiel. I know we're all here to hear Kim talk, so I will hand it over to Kim, who will give you a rundown of Speakeasy's marketing services and some things to expect there. And then I believe we can move to Q&A.
Perfect. Thanks, Jack. So I'm sure that everything that Jack has covered right now sounds like a lot to handle. So luckily, we do offer additional digital marketing services, specifically digital advertising services to our brand partners to help alleviate some of the workload when it comes to testing audiences, testing content, testing copy. So as part of the service, the first portion is just us auditing and making sure that everything is kosher between your accounts. So we get all of the access to your ad accounts, your Google Analytics accounts. And if you don't have those already set up, we can definitely help you set up those assets. We also ensure that all of your tracking is implemented correctly. So when it comes to the pixel, you also have to set up event tracking. So you want to track things like add to cart, checkouts initiated, purchase revenue, things like that, and making sure that it's all feeding back into your ad platforms and getting the data that you actually need to make actionable decisions. After auditing everything to see what you've tested and haven't tested, we develop your paid digital strategy for launch and how we can leverage your content to reach our national audience on the paid digital side. The major platforms that we utilize in our paid advertising right now are Facebook, Instagram, Google, and Pinterest. And we're consistently looking for newer platforms to expand upon so that we can create an ecosystem when it comes to the advertising side of things. And what do we do after we've launched? So we literally handle all of the optimizations, all of the recommendations, all of the A/B testing. The only thing that we do need your help on is the creative assets. So things like your lifestyle photography that you've invested a lot of money on, we want to leverage that as well. We also leverage any videography that you have for your brand and any kind of graphic imagery as well. Other than that, we write all of the copy. And as part of the audit process, we actually send out a branding questionnaire to make sure that whatever copy that we write fits in with the brand tone and how you like to speak to your audience, and manage all of that for you. And at the end of the day, all of the data is yours. So we put together monthly reporting packages so you can see what campaigns have been running, what changes have been made, what have we tested, what audiences have we tested, how your store has grown, and any kind of future recommendations that we have for your brand when it comes to not only the e-commerce side of things, but maybe the retail side of things as well. Next slide. So I guess you guys want to see how has this worked for another brand client that we've worked with. So we've put together a digital ads case study for Danos Tequila. Their objective was to scale their D2C sales volume on a nationwide basis, increase their brand awareness, and then identify new core audience segments through their advertising, as well as increasing their sales online. Next. And so this slide really represents the kind of growth that you can see fairly quickly. The left two columns are the 2 quarters that they were doing Speakeasy direct-to-consumer sales without our marketing services. So pretty low volume when it comes to order volume for the quarters. But as you can see on the right 2 columns with when they were actually utilizing our marketing services, the first quarter alone, we actually were able to generate as much revenue as the previous 2 quarters combined and nearly double the order volume. So that was really great to see, especially when that first quarter of us working together is that data collection and testing period. We're just trying to get as much information and learn as much as possible about your core ideal audience. And we can see wins. It's not always going to be the biggest wins right away, but we can leverage that data to scale. And that is what we did for Q1 of 2021 for their brand. They were able to nearly double their order volume compared to the last quarter. And also something to note, Q4 2020 is the holidays. So you're expecting a huge increase, in the fact that we were able to also manage that increase during Q1 when things are typically a little slower in the e-commerce space was a really big win for us. Next slide. To dive in a little bit deeper about their monthly averages prior to Speakeasy's marketing services. For the 6 months prior to our team working with them, their average monthly revenue was right around $2,000, 18 orders per month, 293 users. So not a whole lot of traffic, had a lot of room to grow. Next slide. And then after our Speakeasy marketing services, this is month 6 of their advertising relationship with us. So after 6 months and ability to scale, we were able to get the store volume to over $15,000 in D2C revenue, 144 orders for that month, and over 3,000 visitors into their shop. So if we look at the actual growth, we're looking at a 650% growth in revenue, 700% growth in order volume, and almost 1,000% growth in users. Next. So if you decide that you want to work with our team, I'm sure you have questions about what is the investment. So the initial investment of setting everything up is $2,500, and that encompasses the audit, the strategy development, and the initial campaign setup. And once things have launched, we have a monthly retainer to manage your campaigns and your advertising spend. So the monthly retainer will then shift to $1,000, and that is up to $10,000 in advertising spend. So in the case that you decide that you want to spend more than $10,000, let's say you have a $15,000 ad budget, the retainer will then shift to 10% of your ad budget. So on a $15,000 ad budget, the retainer would be $1,500. And then a common question that I get from the brands that chat with us is, what should I start with as far as a monthly budget? And a comfortable budget to start collecting that data and buying the data that Jack had mentioned earlier is a $3,000 per month. And that is to start. And we do recommend scaling that budget once we get the returns on ad spend that we would like to see on the overall account. But to start, this is a great place for data collection, gaining learnings, and honing in on your ideal audience online. And we will now move on to the Q&A section. I know there are a lot of questions in the chat box. Let's go to first one. Stephanie asked, is there a way through Speakeasy to integrate our new customers to our MailChimp account and start a nurture sequence? So yes, we do have an integration directly with the Speakeasy shop. I recommend working with your PSMs to get your shop integrated with your MailChimp account. They are experts in it now. And then next question also from Stephanie, do we get access to those who have abandoned their cart to do follow-up email sequences? And that is yes as well. That is the data that we also push into your MailChimp account so you can create those automations. Next question is from Andrea. How does a brand create a post-purchase campaign in terms of not knowing when the product is delivered? So we generally recommend saying that a product can be delivered between 2 to 15 business days. So to be extra safe, I recommend scheduling out a post-purchase sequence after that business day time frame. So, you know, within 21 business days, for example. And then I think 2 were answered online, but I'll go through them too. Will the presentation be, oh, go ahead, Alex.
We had a couple questions on receiving this deck. So we're happy to send out the deck after this presentation, as well as the recording of this. If anybody has questions, you can just throw them right into the chat box and we will answer them live now. We got another question, Kim, here regarding integrations with different CRMs. So do you want to talk a little bit about what we have current integrations with? And then if the brand doesn't work with either of those platforms, what can they do?
Yeah, so it says, can you only integrate with MailChimp or other platforms? So we integrate with Klaviyo and MailChimp at this point in time. As far as Salesforce and Pardot, we can always do a customer export for you, but you should also have your customer list. But I don't believe that we have any current integrations with Salesforce or Pardot. I think there was another question from Guillaume. What is AOV, RPV? AOV is average order value. So you want to make sure that your average order value for per customer is growing or at least maintaining if you're at the max cap. And then RPV is revenue per visitor, which is a little slightly different than average order value. So if we look at your total store revenue and divide it by the number of visitors who visit your store, what is your RPV? Hope that answers that question. And Dave Scott is on the line. He said, who's the best PSM? I think it's everyone. Everyone's great.
Dave's trying to stir the pot.
Yeah.
So we have another question regarding if we already have an idea on our target market and sort of geo-targeted areas in terms of the digital marketing services that Speakeasy provides, Kim. Would you still recommend that 3,000 initial ad spend, or does that vary if maybe the brand has already done some homework prior?
Question.
Yeah, that's a great question. I still do recommend a 3K initial spend just because even if you have an idea on your target market, you can't make real assumptions unless you've tested some of the online advertising prior. So it really comes down to what we find out in the audit, but usually I don't recommend making an update to that while we're in the learning phase.
And Andrea asked, who is the PSM? So previously known as account managers, the partnership success managers. So I am a PSM, Elizabeth is a PSM, and then we have several others as well. So whoever your account manager is or partner success manager is, they can help you with these integrations and as well as answer some questions regarding your store and optimizing for conversions.
Kim, another question for you. If a brand is to utilize digital marketing services through Speakeasy, how long would you expect setup to take? And then, you know, what is the expected time to see some positive ROI there?
Yeah, I get this question a lot. So first question about setup time, it really all depends on the brands. You know, how quickly can you get us access to your accounts so that we can do the initial audit? But let's say that goes very quickly, and we get feedback on the strategy from agreement to ads launch. It could be as quick as 2 to 3 weeks, but it all really depends on the brand and the process behind that. As far as when can you see that return on ad spend and scalability for your brand, every brand is different. Some brands are starting with no data, no following, no customers, and some brands have, you know, already established some kind of presence in the retail side of things, and now they're shifting to online. So it varies from brand to brand, but I always like to quote, it takes about 3 months for us to collect the data and 6 months to really see the scalability. So it does take some time and investment and patience, but I promise that it's going to be well worth it, and then you're just going to be able to maintain that scalability moving forward. I have a question with Facebook. Facebook is going to stop Facebook analytics starting July 1st. I'm wondering if you have any recommendations around this. So if you're talking about the organic side of things, they do have a new reporting platform, which isn't great, and there's no real way to go around that. But when it comes to the advertising side of things with the iOS update and all of the data that you're losing from the iOS users, we highly recommend working with our team to get Facebook conversion API set up for your store. We have it set up for a few of our stores already. That will help push first party data back into the Facebook platform to capture any missing data that you have. And then in addition to that, Facebook will actually be releasing a modeled conversions reporting feature June 30th. So after the end of this month, we should start seeing what Facebook thinks is the number of conversions that you should have gotten with the iOS update change. But it's not going to be one-to-one to data, but it should be helpful from an optimizations point.
And to touch on that, to get the conversions API plugged in, you can talk to your PSM and we can make sure that happens.
Yeah. Was there anything else that I'm missing?
Sorry, I was muted. There's another question here, Kim, regarding, I think this is an interesting question, actually. If you start broad on your audience, is that going to create greater returns, or do you find that the greater returns come after the fact, after you've sort of narrowed down your target audience?
Yeah, so one of the big wins when you start broad is that you can start finding audiences that you had no idea you should have been targeting in the first place. And so I do always recommend starting a little bit broad in the beginning and then honing in on your best performing markets and audience interests and age ranges later on. But yes, when you get to a point where you know that these are your winning people, you'll find better scalability there. But when you're starting out and you don't have any data, let's not make any assumptions. How motivating is free shipping to you as consumers? Is the expectation that all products should have free shipping, or is it on a sliding scale? So we do recommend having a sliding scale for your store for between one bottle purchase versus 2 or 3, and then actually setting a free shipping threshold, because free shipping, although it's not a motivator, it's also a deterrent if you don't offer some kind of free shipping. Because of Amazon, everyone expects free shipping and everything to arrive in 2 days, and it's just, you know, not possible for the mom and pop e-commerce shop. But you can try to at least, you know, alleviate some of that by offering free shipping by a minimum threshold of bottles purchased or value in the cart. How many ads do you typically cycle in the testing phase? So I don't recommend testing too much at once. I recommend usually about 3 to 4 ads per audience. and then narrow it down from there. But if you're testing ads, don't test audiences. If you're testing audiences, don't test too many ads. So it really depends on what your strategy is and what you're trying to achieve. You know, are you trying to find an audience? Or are you trying to find your ideal copy? Or are you trying to find the best picture? Do you see diminishing returns from your social media campaigns? So I do recommend that you do a campaign refresh on all of your ads at least every 6 weeks if you're not doing that. So there is a diminishing return on your ads if you don't change up the ad copy or imagery. People seeing the same ad over and over and over again, it's going to be less effective. People call it ad fatigue. So I do recommend updating it on a regular basis, but allowing it to phase out. You'll see in the data pretty quickly when the cost per acquisitions go up. Any other questions?
Well, if there are any other questions, of course, please feel free to reach out. Like I said, we are going to be sending out a recording as well as a copy of this deck. Please let us know if there's anything we can do to help. Your PSM, of course, would be able to help you with any MailChimp or Facebook pixels. And then, of course, Kim will be able to help you if you are interested in the marketing services provided by Speakeasy. And with that said, thank you all for attending today's webinar. It's great to see so many familiar names, and we do hope that you'll join us in the future for additional webinars. Thank you so much.
Thanks, everybody.